Hello, P71. Welcome back to today's lab and lecture. Today we're going to go over and demonstrate how do we use reflective light and how do we use reflector. First of all, let's get started. What is reflector? So since we're in our home today, I'm in my living room, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pick and choose surfaces or things I can use for reflector. So first of all, what are your choices? Let's look at a few things that we have available that we can use in our house. First of all, a typical cardboard. This cardboard I cut from my box here. Now we have a typical reflector which is commonly used, our whiteboard. Next, what I like most of all, which is my pretty much go-to reflector that I can use anywhere, is our aluminum foil. It's great because it's real reflective on one surface, one side, and the other surface we have this kind of a little bit more of mottled silver, which is great. From here, I just basically ripped it off of my roll of aluminum foil, and I'm going to show you how we can use this. Next of all, I have all of these. I have different sizes of mirrors. These mirrors live inside my camera bags. I can put it almost in my pocket. I can take these anywhere. I have all these different sizes of mirrors. These look good because they basically reflect light and you can see what's happening. These are great reflectors because with this source I can create a very direct light or a really diffuse light. So this is something we're going to be using today as well. Next of all, how do you support your reflectors? And that's going to be an important issue because a lot of you don't have light stands or other kind of accessories to basically set up your reflectors. Unless you have an assistant or somebody to help you, and a lot of you won't, let's look at what can we use or how can we mount or set up our reflectors so they're self-standing. What I like to do, again, we all have this. I know you have these books. I use a thin hardbound book. This book is great because it's very stiff and it will support itself with what I call my duopod because it has two legs. One leg, second leg. These will set up and they will stand by themselves. And what we're going to do, we'll take and we will line our aluminum foil inside of our book. There's our self-standing reflector with a book. What if we don't have a book? I know you do because you're all students. And I know you guys have this very popular DVD. Again, here's our duopod. Same thing. I can take my aluminum foil, I can form it, I can wrap it inside my DVD. Again, what's nice about this aluminum foil, I can bend it, crumple it, fold it, and I can make my self-standing reflector. And here we go. So now, how do we use these? So let's go ahead and I'm going to cut to my subject I set up here in my living room, and we're going to show you exactly how to use these reflectors. Welcome everybody back to the next part of our presentation. What you see here is this basically is our setup that I've chosen my owl here for my object. You can see we're positioned here so that my subject is facing my lens, and to the left side of my object is my window light. So half of my subject is in highlight and half is in shadow. Our highlight looks pretty good, but we want to fill in the shadow, and so in order to do that, we need to add light by reflecting light back into our subject. So let's go ahead and use the few different items we've mentioned earlier, and we're going to see what works real effective. So first of all, our whiteboard. You can see here we have our whiteboard, and as I position it into my scene, I can control the amount of light that affects my owl here. So if I take my board out, look what happens. Now when I put it in, I'm going to go ahead and bring it in at a different distance so you can see what happens when you have your reflector farther and closer to your subject. That affects how much light is going to be in your scene. So now I'm going to bring in my light. It's important to angle your reflector in the direction of your light, because as the light is hitting my reflector, it's bouncing back into my subject shadow here. So let's go ahead and try that. So as I come in, you can see the shadow getting lighter and lighter and lighter, to where if I brought this in real close, I can almost make it look as light as my highlight side. And again, if we don't have an assistant or a way to hold this up, what I like about the boards, we just go ahead and we bend it. Now it's self-standing. And so again, depending on where I angle my reflector, again, it's going to affect my shadow side. Just be aware when you start framing in your scene, you want to frame so that you don't see any of your reflector, any of your crop marks. So the first part of your assignment, you're going to photograph your subject without reflector. Then you're going to put the reflector in, and you're going to submit and photograph those two different types of photographs. Next, our reflector with our aluminum foil. So here again, I've taken my basic CD cassette. I've taken the case, I've opened it up, I've folded my aluminum foil in my DVD case, and now again I'm going to position it into my scene so it fills in my shadow. And look what happens as I take my reflector and I start moving it into my scene. You can see the intensity is much more than the white. Depending on how reflective your surface is, you can control how much light you want to bounce in here or reflect in. This is what we call reflective light using a reflector. So again, here you can see. Just be aware of when you start using your reflector, depending on how large your surface is and how high it is, it's going to affect how much of your subject is going to be lit. So again, because this CD case is about the same size as my owl, I need to be able to angle it so that I get a good reflection on the full body of my owl. And I can move this back to the side and more frontal so I can control that shadow. Again, this is using my DVD case. Next, we can do the same principle with our hard book here. Now, even though this is a book that has different drawings and text inside our book, we can still use it as a reflector because it's still reflecting off the surfaces. Just be aware of, you want to make sure you use a neutral surface. You want to make sure your reflective surface is white mainly, or a silver, because it's more of a neutral light. You don't want any color light. So watch as I bring my book closer and closer. What's happened, if any of you notice, I have sunlight coming in and out of my window here, so that's affecting my amount of light. So as the light comes in, my bright side of my owl here, my highlight side is getting brighter and my shadow side is getting darker. So I can adjust that by bringing in my book. Now, I'm going to take my aluminum foil here, and I'm going to go ahead and now I'm going to wrap it on my book. Now I have a reflector. So look what's happening with that reflector. It's very hard. Depending on how smooth your surface is, you're going to create different types of reflective modeling light. This is pretty intense light. I use a mirror mainly for highlighting little specular highlights on my scene. As I take it back, it's not going to be as hard. And again, I can control it by using the different parts of my surface. Again, we can control our use of our reflector by moving it around our subject. Now our last reflector is our mirror. Be careful with mirrors because they can get pretty intense. Look what happens. I can really create a very hard reflective light, and that's actually too much. So again, I want to be aware of where my mirror is. So I can take and move my mirror off to the side. Again, if you have a freestanding mirror, I can, again, because I have option to put surface in here, I can take and put my aluminum foil in here, which isn't as bright, or I can take just basically a white piece of paper, and now I've got a little bit softer, less intense source or reflector. So again, what I do a lot of times is I'll take a white sheet of paper and I'll wrap it against my freestanding support here, and I'll use it for my reflector. Again, here's with it, and here's without it. So again, these are good samples of how I want you to perform this assignment by using your reflector to fill in the shadow side. And again, for this assignment, I want a before and I want an after shot. So again, if you have any questions, please email me